Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Freddy, and this video is where I will be talking about what has happened in my bookish life this past week. What have I finished, what I'm currently reading, what I am going to read or what I feel like reading, what have I got, if any, and many more other random bookish topics, if the ones that came to my mind. This past week, I think I kind of made a mistake by taking Pedro Páramo, written by Juan Rulfo, as some sort of a beach read, because let me show you. This book is kind of thin, it's pretty short, and I think I was tricked by that. I thought that it was going to be a relaxing, a breezy read, and as it turned out, I was deceived. I was terribly deceived by this appearance, and I thought that he had a really nice premise. You know, the whole thing about people, not people, but a town inhabited by ghosts and all that. It's really interesting, and I thought that, oh, I was probably going to finish this in one day. But as it turned out, it has already been more than 1 week, and I kind of been hesitant to continue with this book because I don't think that I am actually in the correct headspace to read this book right now. I'm not sure when that will be. Maybe sometime when I feel a little bit more relaxed, but certainly not now. So I don't think I'm going to kind of DNF this book. This book is certainly going to still be something that I consider as currently reading, but it will be much slower. At least it will take much longer than one day to finish this book. But yeah, anyway, it was a mistake that I made, and I'm pretty sure that I kind of made that mistake before this as well. Again, because of the same reason, the length. I kind of thought that, oh, I just want to relax one time. I think it was earlier this year. I wanted to relax by reading Albert Camus' The Outsider, and that book wasn't exactly tough, but it was kind of boring. I mean, the way that it started was kind of boring, and I did not finish that book. But I think I'm gonna probably try read that book again some of the time. But I just thought that that book was a little bit boring. The whole thing with the parent being dead and the funeral and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a little bit. It wasn't overwhelming, but yeah, it just didn't have enough punch to it. You know, if you know what I mean. So what else am I currently reading? And since this is Victober, I am currently reading these two books by Victorian authors. The first one is Charlotte Bronte. This one is The Professor. I'm sensing a bit of a Mary Sue vibe with this book, although I'm not sure if this is a fair way of describing Charlotte Bronte's writing. I mean, Jane Eyre kind of feels a little bit Mary Sue-ish, and Villette also had a little bit of Mary Sue-ish element to that. So yeah, this book's main character is a guy, but he feels like a bit like a Mary Sue, a sassy one, but kind of perfect in a way. I'm not sure how I would feel about that, but since this is a small book, I think I'm just gonna finish this one anyway. The next one that I'm currently reading, and I actually have not really read much of this one, is Elizabeth Gaskell's Mary Barton. And what I feel really interested about this one is that Elizabeth Gaskell's writing usually revolves around characters who are kind of the working class. So I suppose you won't see stories that centers a lot on kind of like people of the elite class, higher class, and more on stories about people who are of the working class. And this in particular kind of takes place in this manufacturing town, I think in Manchester. So I am interested to see how that is going to be like. And also this is going to be my first Elizabeth Gaskell book. I've always been wanting to read more of her stuff, so I think so far what I've been reading, it's just an introduction. Nothing juicy really happened, so I kind of have a good feeling about that. But then again, I have good feelings about many other books that I DNF'd before, so I guess it's a little bit too early to say. But anyway, we'll see how it is. Maybe we'll check in again next week. Yeah. This book, I've been talking about this for quite a while now, but I've still not progressed a lot with this one. This is Rose Tremaine's Restoration, a historical fiction, and it's not bad in itself, but it's just, there are so many other books that grab my attention, and I don't know why this book just kept being pushed to the back. Every time I found a new dazzling, shining book, this book just kept being pushed. Like, while I was in the middle of reading this one, suddenly a new book just came strutting in front of me, and I was like, wow. And I get that book. And this one would get abandoned for a while, at least. But I think I'm going to return to this book, and I'm going to pay more attention to it. I'm going to give more of my focus on this one. I'm going to lavish my attention to this book, and this is something that I promise with this book. Although I'm not sure if I'll be able to keep that promise. But hey, anyway, we'll see how it is again with this book next week. We'll see if I am a person who honors my promise to a book. Currently, I am also doing a buddy read with a bookstagrammer named Faye from Solitude of Reading, and we are currently reading this book by Madeline Tien. This one is Do Not Say We Have Nothing. And this book is actually the second book by Madeline Tien for me, and the first one that I read was called Certainty. It was a really nice book, and I gave it 5 stars because I just love it so much. I really love the voice in that book, and I could see that this book has the same voice. And this book is kind of a historical fiction / domestic fiction, maybe with a little bit of war fiction element injected into it, although there's not much of a full-fledged war going on in this book. But there's certainly chaos, political chaos, turmoil, and stuff like that. So this book is kind of like a dual narrative book. The first set of narrative takes place in the current time in Canada, where we see the narrator and her mother is living, and they just lost, the family just lost the father to suicide. And then one day there is a person from China, a young woman, who is kind of related to the father's history. She comes to them and she lives with them. So we'll start to probably see a little bit of what's going on with the father's past in China. And the second narrative is kind of about these various people, various figures, characters in 20th century China, who are actually related to this father who committed suicide. And from there we will also see what is the father's relationship to these people, what are the relationships to each other, what they did, and how it kind of led to this father's suicide. And I think this whole premise is kind of interesting. And this book also combines a lot of like the genre, the style that I really love, domestic fiction, historical fiction, so many good stuff. Really, it is supposed to be juicy, but I must say that I am not exactly enjoying this book right now. Seriously, I am kind of halfway into this book, but I am not reading it closely. I kind of skim certain parts because I just don't feel like I enjoy this one very much. It's a little bit too stodgy and a little bit too, I would say, verbose. And what I dislike the most so far is that the characters, a lot of the characters have translated names. There are characters from China, 20th century China, and I just don't understand why they should have translated names. I'll probably talk about this more once I finish this book. So yeah, that there is something to expect. I kind of hope that something will kind of change my opinion on this book later on, but well, if it doesn't, maybe you'll expect a rant in the future. Maybe you like hearing rants. I don't know. If you like hearing that, maybe you'll be excited for the future. Something to look forward to in my channel, of course. So those are kind of like the books I'm currently reading. So now we go to the books that I have finished. I finished 3 books, and if you saw my last Bookish avec video, you'd see that I did not finish any book last week, but I was working my way through several books, and I am so happy that I was able to finish 3 books successively this weekend. I felt so accomplished. I felt like my weekend was so fulfilling. Okay, the first book that I finished is actually a group read organized by Jyotsna from Jyotsna's Bookscapades, and this one is called Train to Pakistan by Kushwan Singh. This is a historical fiction, and it takes place during the period of partition in the history of India/Pakistan. And this is a novel about a small village community in somewhere in near the border of India and Pakistan, and there are trains like going back and forth, crossing through that village every day, and it's kind of like something that they see all the time. And during the time of partition, these trains would sometimes carry kind of like refugees, like Hindu and Sikh people from Pakistan to India, and Muslim people from India to Pakistan, and at the same time there were also like really messy conflicts going on between these communities, because that was a really chaotic time. There was a lot of violence going on, but somehow at the beginning of this book we see that this village is kind of untouched by all of that, until one day, and I think this is probably the event that is kind of like a turning point in this book. One day a train arrives in this town, and that train is literally filled with corpses of people, and it's just horrible. And that whole thing just pretty much causes this village to kind of turn into this chaotic place, because this village is inhabited by different kinds of people. There are Muslims there, there are Sikh there, and they were living happily before this train arrived. After this train arrived, they start to have some suspicion towards one another. There seems to be some sort of discord happening between these two communities in this little village, and we see how this village is kind of like transformed after that particular event happened. So this book, it feels kind of it makes you feel uncomfortable, when you read this book, because you feel that you could totally understand how this sense of discord is growing between different communities, particularly in a community that is multiracial and multi-religions, and you can see how easily they turn from harmonious to kind of like full of conflict and warring with one another, and it kind of makes you feel really uncomfortable, because you feel that it is totally plausible in real life. And This book also portrays scenes of chaos and war in such a really realistic way and gory way, which I thought was kind of, um, it made me feel certainly unsettled. But at the same time, that's what I kind of enjoyed about this book. It feels real and it doesn't try to sugarcoat things. So I really enjoyed this one. Another book that I finished is Their Eyes Were Watching Goth, and this one is by Zora Neale Hurston. And this book was actually the book that I buddy read with Shannon from That Soap Ho. And this book is about this the personal growth of a young black woman named Janie at the turn of the century, 20th century, in America, specifically in Florida. And we see how Janie kind of grows into this sort of a person who has a set of ideals that she hopes to achieve in her life, especially the ones related to, say, relationship and love and romance. And she goes through at least two marriages before she kind of has this personal growth into a person who is more empowered, confident, independent, especially as a woman in early 20th century in her community at the time. So it's really inspiring to see this kind of a growth story of a person who is actually living at a place and time where, you know, being a black woman, black young woman, is not exactly like the most privileged position ever. And you see how she kind of views the world around her, and how the fact that she meets a person changed that. And we see all of that change through this through her experience with her marriages and her romance and relationships. And I think overall this book is just a really beautiful book, even though there are some scenes in this book that feels kind of sad in a way. But I think that this book is a really good one, and I really enjoyed it as well. So the third book that I finished is something that I read, like, I think 3 to 4 weeks ago. And this one is Alice Smith, How to Be Both. And this one is awesome. This one is also another 5-star. And this book actually has 2 sets of narratives. And I just found out that this book was published in 2 different editions. One actually with the with one of the stories first, and another one with the other story first. So it's kind of interesting to see how it is. And I would kind of imagine how my reading experience would be like if I have read the two parts of this book in a different way, you know. But then again, I got this book. I didn't know about anything about that, so I just read it as how the pages came to me. So, the 2 parts in this book. The first part is actually about this young girl who is living in the UK, and she just lost her mother. And that part is actually just very simple. It's just about a girl who is trying to process her grief, and how she kind of achieves some sort of closure of some sort through works of art, and through understanding her mother better, and also through her friendship with another person. So that's the first part. The second part is about this young painter who lives around the time of the Renaissance period in Italy. And that painter, that painter is a girl. But then, in order to become a painter, she has to be kind of like a boy. And we see how the painters kind of grow into the person that they become at the end of this book. And that painter actually painted pictures of pictures at a palace where the girl in the modern part of this book, she actually saw the picture in Italy with her mother when her mother was still alive. And so there's this really nice interconnectedness between these two parts that I really enjoy. But I'm not exactly sure right now what is the thing that makes me really, kind of liking this book. It is tough, of course. There are certain parts of the writing that makes it kind of a tough reading a little bit, but there is something about this book. I think it's the voice and the content and the way that this book, especially the characters, always break conventions in this book. That makes it feels like really. It makes it feels like it's resonating really well with me. I really enjoyed that one. And I must admit, I don't know everything about this book. There are, of course, certain things that I don't catch, but typically for me, that is fine. I'm totally fine with reading a book and not getting 100% what the book is about. I am fine with leaving a book, say for example, 70% on 70% understanding it, and while I'm still in the dark about the rest of the 30%, for example, because I feel like my initial reading of a book does not have to be like this perfect experience, but it has to be enjoyable, and that's what I felt about this book. This is kind of like a good example of that. I did not get everything from this book, but I enjoyed the experience. It's wonderful, and if you are considering reading this book, you should totally do that. So those are the books that I have finished this week. I have some books that I feel like reading, this coming week. So yeah, let's just go through them really quick. I'm not sure which one that I would decide on reading. I just got this one recently, and this one is by Turkish author Ahmet Hamdi Tanpınar, and this is The Time Regulation Institute, and I think that the title is really interesting, and I think this is going to be a little bit eccentric. I'm not 100% sure what this is going to be about, but yeah, usually I am a very title-oriented person. I see the title as interesting, then automatically I'll be interested in this book. Also, I have started this book a little bit. This one is Ayobami Adebayo, a Nigerian author, and this book is titled Stay With Me. And I think the reason why I really kind of like I have this interest in reading this book is because the cover is really beautiful, and I also want to read a little bit more about books that were written by African authors. And this one is a domestic fiction, I believe. It's about a kind of a crumbling marriage, I think, and it is set in 1980s Nigeria. I'm also kind of interested in reading a little bit of science fiction, so I started this one a while ago, but I did not really continue with it because I didn't have that momentum. But this one is The Female Man by Joanna Russ, and again, like my reasoning for Stay With Me, I just picked this book because I thought that the cover looked really interesting. I mean, it's kind of interesting in a creepy way. Like, I don't understand what these people are doing. They all look kind of identical. So, yeah, I mean, maybe someone can enlighten me on that. I'm not sure how it is, but it certainly feels really sci-fi-ish in a way. But it's also kind of creepy sci-fi-ish. I know that this series, SF Masterworks, kind of have a lot of like creepy covers. Like, I'm thinking about I Am Legend by Matheson. But yeah, this one is kind of okay. I mean, I don't mind having this book beside me while I sleep, as opposed to I Am Legend. I'm also interested in reading more Malaysian books, and you'll probably know that based on my past videos, I have been interested in reading more Malaysian stuff since the beginning of this year, but I think I kind of slowed down and probably stopped a little bit after I dropped A.S. Said's what's it called, The Morning Post. And because I thought that that book was a little bit too dense and the writing style just didn't work for me, so I think it has been quite a while since I last picked up a Malaysian book, and that was in July, I believe. This one is something that I would want to try again. This one is by Tash O, and this one is the Harmony Silk Factory. So Tash O is actually one of the 2 Malaysian authors that have been kind of nominated for the Booker Prize, and this book was actually one of the books that was long listed. I think this one was his first book, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm really interested to see how this book looks like. The fact that it was kind of like, some people thought it was good enough to be long listed, so yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, so I guess that's it for my bookish video, and I guess I'll see you again in a different video. So until then, take care, have a great reading week, and I'll see you again. Thanks for watching, and bye.